Commanders at Cowboys. Another spread over a touchdown. This line is up from the look ahead of 9.5, and rightfully so to an extent. Maybe you disagree, but Dallas covered a double-digit line against Carolina. In Week 11, Washington lost outright as favorites of over a touchdown, and they're now swept by the Giants on the season, -6 in the turnover differential department, which is very hard to do in a 12-point loss. Last turnover came on that pick 6. So initial thoughts for you on Washington and Dallas. Total, by the way, of 48.5. Any thoughts for you on the total in Green Bay and Detroit before we move on here with a total of 45.5?
Interested in the over for all the reasons we mentioned about these offenses probably having success. Detroit just looks like such an over team to me right now. I mean, they're efficient on offense, very, very efficient, but defense can just be had at times.
Okay, so Washington and Dallas, any bet or potential bets for you there?
Yeah, this is another one where I like the underdog. I think it's going to be a theme throughout this show. I like every single underdog on the Thanksgiving slate, and this one is definitely standing out to me after it moved multiple points away from the look ahead. This is just a classic buy low, sell high. Dallas wins by 20. The Commanders lose to the consensus worst team in the NFL and ruin everybody's survivor pools, which, by the way, you could have listened to me and not played Washington because that was not a good play when it's chalk. I mean, it's fine if somehow nobody's on it, but everyone was always going to be on Washington, and that was always going to be a losable game because every game is a losable game when your quarterback is Sam Howell. But also, by the same token, every game is also a winnable game when your quarterback is Sam Howell because he brings upward mobility with your passing offense. Obviously, when he's turning the ball over and taking sacks, he brings downward mobility as well, and that's why they could lose to anybody. But the Commanders can also beat anyone. We've seen that already this year, giving the Eagles a spirited game multiple times, and Sam Howell scoring 30 points against them at will. And in some ways, these spots, I like it better for Washington when they're an underdog like this because they are going to be forced to pass. We've seen it against the Eagles. We've seen it against the Seahawks when they were down. And now playing indoors against a Dallas team that has absolutely feasted on a disgusting 32nd ranked schedule. I like his chances to score some points here. Also, by the same token, we have to say I don't know how the hell anybody from Washington is going to cover CeeDee Lamb. So there's that. But maybe that just means this is Commanders and over in a parlay. I don't know. But it's just hard to cover this many points when the other team's offense has as much of a pulse as Washington does. I mean, you see what Dallas does to some of these bad teams. The Giants, the Panthers, the Jets, they're winning 40-10, 33-13, whatever it is. But the Commanders are a different kind of bad team. First of all, they're better than those teams. Second of all, they have the offense that can score points when they're in a negative script. These other teams have quarterbacks that if the other team's pass rush is coming after them with no fear of any sort of two-dimensional offensive approach, it's just over, And Sam Howell can complete passes in must-pass situations. When has Dallas choked out an offense like this that was actually pretty good? Like maybe the Rams? I mean, that's pretty much it. And we know their offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. So
Stafford also got hurt in the first half of that game, but it was over even at that point. That
yeah, but like other than that, these teams are just absolutely bottom of the barrel on offense. And that's not Washington. Like, I think they can score 20-plus points here. And it's pretty hard to cover 11 when an opponent scores 20 points. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, especially with how this Washington pass rush pretty much is nowadays. Like, I know they sacked Tommy DeVito a million times, but I think that's a Tommy DeVito thing and not a Washington pass rush thing. So we'll see. We'll see how Dallas looks on offense. I mean, they didn't look great at times against Carolina. I thought, they scored 16 points in the fourth quarter of that game to make that game more of a blowout than it actually was for most of that way. Like, they got another pick six. Maybe Deron Bland just gets a pick six every game and sets the record, but yeah.
He's got 4 already. You never know.
I just think this line is a little bit higher than it should be. I don't really see a reason to move off the look-ahead line based on last week.
Okay, I agree with you. At least maybe Washington gets some turnover regression, but I am a little concerned about how being able to keep pace, even covering a double-digit number, just because Washington ranks number 19 in dropback EPA allowed after trading Montez Sweat and Chase Young, so that's over the last 3 games, small sample size, but they rank number 19 in that department after facing Mac Jones, Geno Smith, and Tommy DeVito. Dak Prescott now the highest graded quarterback across the NFL, and by the way, we brought this up last week when it came to his MVP odds. They were in the 30 to 41 range at the time. Now 16 to 18 to 1 to win NFL MVP. Just a nugget there. Prescott's going to have his way with this Commanders defense. I will say, Howell since week 4, which is kind of the point, the juncture in the season that I like to bring up with him because that was the first Eagles game where Washington was competitive, and he's been playing relatively better, even though yesterday was not an example of that against New York. But he ranks number 14 in adjusted EPA per drop back since week 4, which is above league average among qualified quarterbacks. But I don't think I'm going to be able to bet this. I'm not advocating to bet Dallas, but I don't think I'm going to be able to back Washington just because I'm extremely concerned about them ranking below average against the quarterbacks they've faced in the last 3 weeks. Now you're going up against one of the best and one of the most explosive offenses passing wise in the NFL, and the way Prescott has played throughout the entire season. I still think Washington may struggle to cover this number, but I understand your logic.
Yeah, getting stops could be tough to come by for sure. I mean, this secondary versus this Dallas receiving core is a massive mismatch, and we know Dak Prescott can make accurate throws, especially in the intermediate zones when he's not under pressure. And obviously, this is a pretty much toothless Washington pass rush now. I mean, yeah, they can get some pressure on the inside because they still have really good players there, but we'll see if they can put any sort of pressure on. But like I said, if Washington scores 20-plus points, they are going to be big favorites to cover, and I think they can do it against Dallas defense that has just absolutely feasted on cupcakes. I mean, yes, they're very good, but this is a professional passing attack.
It's true. You could argue the professional pass or the non-professional passing attacks that the Commanders have faced over the last 3 weeks, depending on what you want to make of Seattle, even though Geno Smith has been below average in a bunch of different passing metrics this season. But you could argue that their defense could perform worse. But again, a little bit inflated. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to the point where I bet it, but I do get your logic behind the wager whenever you do wind up wagering this. Do you think you're going to take the 11.5 or 11, or are you going to wait?
Yeah, I like it. I couldn't imagine this going too much higher. I mean, think about some of the teams we've seen that get up to that sort of number. I mean, just like the Raiders were 13.5 on the road after a bye and a long trip, like a bye for their opponent, and they're on a long trip. It's hard to imagine Dallas getting too much higher. I mean, it really is.